We got a top 10 matchup happening in Auburn. The Auburn Tigers versus the Tennessee Vols.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into a special crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Vols. I'm Zach Blackerby, host of Locked On Auburn. He is the Eric Cain, host of Locked On Vols. We'll give you our picks and predictions and everything in just a moment. But Eric, obviously this is a big game. It's the biggest game of the weekend. Game day is going to be in Neville Arena for this game. To me, like, obviously both teams are very talented, but from the Auburn perspective, the big question is, will we see the best player, in my opinion, in college basketball, and that is Johni Broome. That's kind of the big storyline heading into this from the Auburn side of things.
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest storyline. I mean, he's not only an SEC Player of the Year candidate, he's a National Player of the Year candidate. He's a veteran. He's been there, done that. I mean, you look at his, what he's done already this year, and I know he's missed the last two games, 17 points, 10 rebounds, 43 block shots already. Just a really, really good player in this league. And if he's available, he's the best player on the court. If he's not, that crown goes to Chaz Lanier. So it'll be even more interesting. But yeah, that is absolutely the biggest storyline of the game. And it's against two teams who are in the top 10 and both teams that are looking to make some noise on into March.
Yeah, and Auburn's been okay without him, and they've still beaten two ranked teams in his absence. They blew out Mississippi State, and there's still questions on, how good is Mississippi State. We'll learn more over that over the next few weeks. But then they went to Georgia, beat a ranked team on the road. It was not pretty, Eric. It was not pretty at all, but a win is a win. We've seen how tough it is to win on the road in this conference so far this season. And so depending on who you ask, they kind of feel differently about how that game went. But this is a team that can certainly hold its own without Johni Broome, but playing Georgia on the road versus playing Tennessee at home, I think those are two very different things. Tennessee's a really good basketball team.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee, your typical Tennessee basketball team plays really, really good defense. And the last couple of years, they've had a true scorer, which they didn't necessarily have like the first 6-7 years of Rick Barnes. I mean, they had some guys that could make a basket, don't get me wrong. But
sure,
last year you had Connect. This year you got Chaz Lanier. I mean, those are two 100% number one shooters. And so, but it is a typical Rick Barnes coach basketball team. They are stingy defensively. They are going to harass you in the backcourts. They're going to win the turnover battle. They're going to win the assist to turnover battle. Potentially, they're going to out rebound you for the most part. And when Tennessee doesn't do those things, you see losses at Florida and of course at Vanderbilt last week. But yeah, talking about Auburn and like it's kind of like that football mindset. This past fall, Tennessee won 10 games, went to the college football playoffs, but Tennessee wasn't winning as clean and as pretty as you'd want. They weren't scoring as much points, and the air raid wasn't there and all that. It's like, but you're still winning 10 games, right? In basketball,
right,
just get a win, especially when your best player's off the court.
Yeah.
Just win. Who cares? Just win and move on.
Yeah. You mentioned the rebounding aspect of this, and obviously Johni Broome impacts the game in a bunch of different ways, but Auburn obviously not as good of a rebounding team when the best center in college basketball isn't available. To me, I think that's going to be the mismatch if he doesn't play, or maybe if he does play and he's not 100%, or it takes him a little bit of time to kind of reacclimate to the speed of the game. That, to me, I think is the biggest concern from the Auburn side of things, is if Tennessee comes in and dominates the boards. I think that's how Tennessee pulls this quote-unquote upset.
Yeah, and Tennessee's going to do that. Igor Milicic is a guy that rebounds the basketball very well and has all season long. But your big man, Felix Okpara, transfer portal addition from Ohio State, he's been really good on defensive end. Not as good as Broome, of course, at blocking shots, but he is a rim protector. His offense is starting to come around a little bit, but to be as big as he is and to be the force he is down low, he's not the best rebounder. Now, last game against Mississippi State, he had 13 rebounds, looked really, really good. So that's going to need to continue to carry over, for Tennessee to, quote unquote, win this rebounding battle and really kind of bully the boards there. But Milicic's been there all season long. Okpara's got to come along. And then you get a healthy, Zakai Zeigler's a great rebounding, guard and, getting those loose balls and all that. But yeah, I think that's one of the areas Tennessee has got to win if you're going to pull off this upset. It's so hard to win on the road in the SEC. Auburn is, the best team in the country right now. With or without the best player, it's still going to be a raucous environment. And you got to win those battles to kind of have a chance late in the game, or, to try to be victorious and then pulling off this upset. I think FanDuel got them at the time of this recording. Tennessee, a 6.5-point dog.
Yeah. How do you feel about these two styles of play colliding? You've got Tennessee, who I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're last in the conference when it comes to average points per game, but they're also the best in the conference as far as defensively, allowing the fewest points per game. And Auburn, not the first at either one of those, but they're towards the top on the opposite end. And a lot of that has to do with pace and overall possession. Mm-hmm. But how do you think these two styles colliding, what kind of product do we see on Saturday?
I think it's going to go one or two ways if history is any indication. I mean, Auburn and Tennessee have had many, many matchups the last couple of years.
Sure.
A couple come to mind in the SEC tournament, and it's Auburn just is too much to handle, the pace, the tempo, and just kind of runs up the score in a quick manner, or it's Tennessee kind of uglies the game up a little bit. So I think it truly goes one of two ways. I heard some stat, and I don't have it off the top of my head, so please excuse me, but it's like points per possession per game or whatever, and like Tennessee ranks towards the end of the last in the SEC, 300 and something in the country. But I think a lot of that is because they are so good defensively that they are making the opposing offenses hold the basketball, up until the shot clock's about to run out and just throwing up a desperate shot, that therefore taking time off the clock, limiting possessions. Tennessee's super efficient. I mean, I think they're ranked top 25 offensive efficiency. So they're doing good work when they have the basketball in their hands. But again, it all starts on the defensive end. So to answer your question, I think it's going to go one or two ways. I think Auburn's going to come out hot, press the pedal to the metal, tempo, and score a lot of points, or Tennessee's going to really muddy it up, ugly it up. And when that happens, who's going to step up on the offensive end to get the buckets when it matters for Tennessee? And that needs to be Chaz Lanier or Zakai Zeigler.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Auburn defends those guys. Denver Jones, I think, is going to be a big part of that perimeter defense. We've seen him be super, super effective. Tahad Pettiford, one of the exciting freshmen in this sport, kind of known more for what he's done offensively. Does Tennessee go at him defensively? I'm curious to see what kind of matchup those types of situations produce. And then, especially if Johni Broome doesn't play, you got to think Chaney Johnson, one of Auburn's big men, is going to have a pivotal role on both offense and defense. So just kind of seeing which matchups materialize in those situations, I think are going to make or break this thing.
Yeah, one thing about Rick Barnes coach basketball teams, and I mean, of course, this is basketball. You can say a lot for teams around the country.
Sure.
Very versatile on the defensive end. Tennessee will go small ball a lot of the times with Igor Milichik's playing the 5. He's a 4, but, playing the 5. They'll slide Jemai Mashak, who is not an offensive threat whatsoever, but, much like, at points in times, Josiah Jordan-James here at Tennessee, just so versatile defensively and just such a pest defensively. He can slide down to the 4, and then, Jordan Gandy coming off the bench. He's a real scorer, a guy that can add a lot of pop to the game when he comes off the bench. But when he's in there, he's playing the 2 as a guy Zeigler at the 1. And then if it's Lanier playing the 3 or whoever it is, Tennessee's got a good job defensively because of that versatility to match up and everything. You just can't let the game get away from you if Felix Agpara, the 5, is off the floor for an extended period of time. And Tennessee's gotten into foul trouble. Tennessee was in big-time foul trouble at Vanderbilt. Tennessee was in big-time foul trouble in a couple of recent games where they've had to play a lot more of that small ball. And especially if Broome is playing, you can't afford to live in that, in my opinion. But nonetheless, that is an option. So I think there'll be a number of different matchups in this game, but I think it all stems from defensive versatility and what Barnes is comfortable with some of his guys out there.
Yeah. Who wins this game? We tell you our predictions next, right here on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Vols. Today's show brought to you by our friends at Gametime. Eric, can you imagine buying tickets anywhere other than with our friends at Gametime?
I can't do it.
No. If you're going elsewhere, it's going to be a more difficult process. No thanks. You're going to spend more money. No thanks. To me, Gametime, it doesn't get any simpler than that. Gametime has a ton of features. Which one is your favorite?
I like the views of your seats before you buy them. So you truly know exactly what you're paying for. It's not just, oh, well, that looks good, but then you get there and you're so let down, or you're ordering food on Uber Eats or something. It's like, oh, that looks so great, but then you get there and you don't know what it is. No, you know exactly what you're paying for because they're going to show you before you pay. No surprise fees at checkout. I love that.
Yeah, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn and Locked On Vols your first listen every single day. Eric, I'm trying not to be an Auburn homer when we talk about our predictions for this game, but until Auburn gives me a reason to not pick them, especially at home, I'm going to take the Tigers here. I think everything about this points in Auburn's direction except for the availability concerns or questions about Johni Broome. I think everything else points Auburn's way. They're red hot. It seems like even when they totally seem like they're going to fall apart, they still find ways to win. Neville Arena has become one of the toughest places for visiting teams to come in and steal a win from Auburn in the entire country. Game day is going to be here. And then also just from an Auburn point of view, this week is Auburn football's junior day, and they're kind of building a big chunk of this weekend's visits around recruits being at the game. So they're going to put extra energy into all of that. I just think this seems like it's geared for Auburn to have a really cool night on campus. And I think all of that from an atmospheric standpoint, I think that's going to impact this this basketball game.
No, I completely agree. And it's not just you, it's Ken Palm. Ken Palm gives the final score prediction 76-68 in favor of Auburn. Tennessee only a 23% chance of victory. ESPN matchup predictor 74% chance of victory for Auburn. So you're looking at the pocket protectors and glasses, and they're telling us the same thing, right? And you joke with me a lot. It's like, you said on certain shows we've done together, like, do you ever pick Tennessee? It's like I do. I pick Tennessee a lot. I mean, I picked Tennessee to win at Ohio State in the playoffs. That didn't work out well. I just don't have a good feeling about this. And Tennessee, the last 10 matchups, Auburn's won seven of them. However, Tennessee has won 3 of the last 4 matchups. So there's a little bit of recency here with Tennessee. A lot of those wins have come in Knoxville, though. This is going to be on the road. And again, you look at where Tennessee struggled at points and times this year on the road, much like the football team, right? At Florida, at Vanderbilt. What team's going to show up? I think this team is Final Four talented if they stay healthy. Small rotation to begin with. There's a couple of guys who are out, and of course, Cam Carr left midseason. Committed to Baylor yesterday. That was really weird, but it's a small rotation.
You can't get
that's another topic of conversation.
Sure.
You can't get in foul trouble, and that's kind of where Tennessee's struggled at points and times this year. So I think that it's going to be a challenge for Tennessee in that environment against a really, really good team with or without Broome, and we'll see if it can kind of be like one of those games where Tennessee plays good defense and Zakai, Zeigler, or Chaz Lanier, kind of carries the load offensively, and then who else will step up? Against Mississippi State this week, Tennessee had a near double-double from Felix Okpara, 13 rebounds, 9 points, 10 points from Jemai Meshack, which you cannot count on that every single week. 10 points from Jordan Gainey. I mean, they got a lot of production from the non-scoring contributors, if that makes sense. So Tennessee's going to need that in this game, but I'm kind of like you. I'm going to pick Auburn to win this game, and hopefully, I am proven wrong.
Yeah, so we're both picking Auburn. FanDuel, you mentioned earlier, 6.5-point line for the Tigers. I think Auburn covers. What say you?
I think Auburn. I'll say Auburn will cover. I like the under as well in this game. So I think this can be kind of an ugly game. I mean, under 140, that's not like it's a 50-50 ball game. Don't get me wrong, but I do think it'll be under. I think there'll be some scoring droughts because that Tennessee defense is just so pesky. And it's not like Auburn's defense is horrible. I think it's 19th in the country. I think there'll be some lulls in this game. But towards the end, I do think Auburn will have another kind of pulled away. But I like the under play here at 140.5.
Yeah, or is it a 5-point game late and then Tennessee has to foul or something? I mean,
I mean, that's why basketball is so difficult when you're talking about this because, you can have a close game and then the last 30 seconds will last 10 minutes and the score will go from 3 points to 7 points in a hurry. Right. So I think it could be kind of like one of those. Yeah,
I think so too. Hey, for all the Auburn folks watching, they want, hey, man, Eric Cain is awesome. I want more Tennessee stuff. Where can they go?
Locked On Vols, man. You can go to Locked On Podcast Network. Check out my page there at Locked On Vols on Twitter or X, I guess, Instagram. We post reels out there. But anytime you need a Tennessee flavor or perspective, maybe before an Auburn clash or maybe battling a top recruit these junior days coming up, Locked On Vols, weekday mornings when you wake up. It's available wherever you get your podcasts.
Yep. And for all the Tennessee folks, if you want the Auburn stuff, everywhere you find Locked On Vols, you'll also find Locked On Auburn. Please like the video. Please subscribe to our channels. We'll see you next time. This has been a crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Vols, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.